Welcome, everybody. I don't know that I have many opening statements, just fired up, excited for the team, proud of the team, ready to get this thing done.
How'd you do at halftime Sunday?
I was good. My son was like on the verge of tears, and you know he just started playing flag football and like really getting into it. So he brings his football with him everywhere, and you guys might see him throwing on the field before the game. He's sitting there and he's ready to cry. And I'm like, Bud, like, our friends are here, our family's here. Like, we're in the NFC Championship game. Like, there are worse things in the world. Like, we're healthy, we're happy. Like, I keep telling you got to do well when there's pressure. Like, let's throw the ball now. So he's winging it with me in the suite. Like, calmed everybody down. It was a good moment.
Jed, what does it mean to be back in this game? The last two haven't gone the way you've wanted to.
Look, the worst feeling in the world is losing in the NFC Championship game, right? Like last year, knowing that we had a great game plan, knowing that we thought we could win that game, things sort of go off the rails and you have very little chance. Like that's a hard feeling, right? Like there's nothing worse. Any of the NFC Championship games that we've lost, like that is the worst feeling, where you're that close to getting to the Super Bowl, right? Now we're here. We've been here a few times. A good group, part of this group has been there. They know what it means to go, right? Like, so the shock of going there and having all the lights on you, like it'll be a very different experience for our guys as they're a little bit more mature this time around. And it's a testament to the work that they've put in. And you have no idea what you're going to do when you're facing the best player on the planet, Patrick Mahomes, right? Like they're a great team. Andy Reid, first ballot Hall of Fame head coach. Like it will be the toughest game that we play all season. Like no doubt about it. But we're going to be ready. We're going to make the most of this opportunity. And I believe in our guys, and I think, you know, we can go take care of business.
Jed, what do you remember from the last Super Bowl trip, Miami?
I mean, like, do you have like a specific or
the
like
game.
there's
the
the
end
game?
Of the game, the fourth quarter.
I mean, I remember Nick Bosa getting held on a 3rd and long, and that not getting called. Like it's football, right? Like, I mean, I should say this. I haven't talked to anybody with Detroit. Like, I feel for them when you're in a situation where you're up and you think you can win a game and make it memorable and things go the wrong way. And I've been on good sides of that and I've been on bad sides of that, right? When you're up by 10 points against a team in a Super Bowl, you know, thoughts are going through your head like, wow, like we're going to have a parade. Like, you know, somebody's going to Disneyland. Like, this is going to be awesome. And then you don't. And that's part of playing in the NFL, right? Like, I get pretty tense during games. It's because you care so much about what happens. But I personally have next to little, if not zero, effect on what happens in the moment of a game. And that's why, like, Lynch and I laugh about it all the time. He's like, I would much rather play than watch these games up in the suite, because, like, when you're out there, you can make a play or not make a play, but you know you did it. But when it means that much to you and you can't affect anything, it's a very, very helpless feeling when you're in a suite or you're in the stands and you're watching the game. And that's kind of how it is with that Super Bowl in Miami. I just thought we had it, and then we didn't.
Jed, you mentioned a group of guys that have been here and kind of been through this. How important is it just not knowing how long this window is going to be open to get this done, to get it done this time?
I mean, when you talk about windows, like, I just think that's such a BS concept in this league, because you never know when you're going to have the opportunity to be here, right? Like, you have to make the most of it. Like, you have to celebrate it. And I go back to Bill Walsh's quote in the catch game. You know, we're champions today, but we still have one more to go. Like, you have to have a moment to celebrate. And I mean, like, I was laughing with Lynch as an aside. When he played in the Super Bowl, like, they played this Sunday. Like, I can't possibly imagine what it was like to go from championship game to playing Super Bowl Sunday in a week. Like, just the requests that you get, like the craziness that goes on, So, I mean, I feel like it's nice when you have that week off to be able to, like, truly have a victory Monday, right? And, like, soak it in that you're the champions of your conference. The Chiefs are champions of theirs. We're the champion of ours. Like, you get a moment to actually appreciate that, where most of the time in this league, you have to move on immediately the next day. And I do think that that's a great piece of this, to take it in. And that's very, very few people have the opportunity to go play in this game, let alone win it. And you have to be able to take it in the moment.
Before the 2019 season, you had two rough years. Kyle's first two, record-wise. You'd fired 3 coaches in a row every year before that.
One we mutually parted ways.
One you mutually parted ways. How did you kind of process that, and did you have to fight against the frustration and impatience to be like, we're building something?
I mean, that's this league, right? Like, you don't know when it's going to happen, and I don't know that anybody outside of our building thought it was going to happen in 2019. But I mean, I remember when, Nick Bosa was sitting there too. It's like, all right, like we've got a chance. If Nick can be what we thought he was, like, we have a chance to have a defense that could be a Super Bowl caliber defense. And I think what we were able to do on offense, we have a chance. Again, you just don't know when these things are going to happen. Like, you can have a great team on paper and it just doesn't come to fruition. You can have a team like we did last year where it looked like we might not make the playoffs, and then you go on a great run, and it's like, well, you make the most of it. Well, 2 years ago, sorry.
Yeah.
I get my NFC Championship games mixed up. But, like, you just don't know when it's going to happen, and I don't know that I had an inclination that we were going to have 2 rough years with Kyle, but you knew that we had a lot to build on. I mean, I think I've told you all that, like, when I interviewed Kyle, within like the first 5 minutes, and almost always, and I've done more than my fair share of interviews, it's always, well, if I was your coach last year, we would have won this, and this player would have been better, and this and this. And Kyle was pretty clear. He's like, this is one of the worst rosters I've ever seen in the National Football League. And I'm like, all right, great. Like, we're getting somewhere. Like, you're being honest, right? And I might not like it, but like, you're being honest. And we knew that working together, we'd have a chance to get here. And knowing that we see the way you build an organization in a very similar way, right? Like, you have a sense of, this is what you want it to look like. This is how you take care of people in the organization. This is what winning looks like and feels like. It makes it a lot easier to build it together.
Jed, you stayed in the background for the most part. You stayed in the background in recent years. Not a lot of public statements, and you just let your football people kind of be the front. Is that intentional? And what would this ring, the 6th championship, mean for you personally?
I mean, I love talking to you guys. Like, I love being here. Like, I wish that I could do this weekly. It would be so much fun for me to do that. I mean, I don't really need to speak, right? Like, our team speaks for itself. And like, I've said this many times, when you hear from me, it's generally not good, right? Like, it's during a coaching change. It's during a, off-field incident that needs ownership commenting on, right? Like, my goal is to build an organization that speaks for itself. And I think we have 2 great leaders of this organization. We've got unbelievable people all around. And like, I would much rather the organization speak for itself than me speak for it.
What kind of contingent will you guys be sending? Staff, alumni?
Lots of people. I don't know. It's still ongoing, but there's a lot of people. We're going to make sure that all staff and interns and everybody, they get to go, and we're doing multiple team charters that are going. I mean, I couldn't tell you all the details off the top of my head, but there's a lot of alumni that are going, and like, people are fired up.
Jed,
how does this
perception-wise, if you guys win, Kyle will be one of the all-time great coaches. If you guys lose, he'll be can't win the big one. Mm-hmm. Perception based on how this game turns out. How will your perception of him change?
I love Kyle.
One way or the other.
I mean, Kyle. It would be hard for me to say that I enjoy working with anybody more than I enjoy working with Kyle. I think Kyle's a phenomenal coach. I think he's done a phenomenal job with our club. I mean, I don't really care what the outside perception is. It is very, very difficult to make the playoffs. It's very difficult to get to a championship game. It's very difficult to win a championship game. It's more difficult to get to this game. And I think Kyle's results more than speak for themselves.
What do you enjoy? What do you enjoy about working with him the most?
I mean, like I said, his honesty, his directness. You know, I mean, we haven't really talked much about Brock, but I mean, that's a good example of Kyle's directness. You know, last year in preseason, I think week 1 of training camp, which you have a quarterback that we're paying, I think, $20 million to. You have a guy that you drafted with investing 3 first-round picks into, and he grabs me after practice. He's like, hey man, we got to talk. And that's generally not a good thing when your coach tells you got to talk. Like, all right, what's up? And he's like, I think our third-string quarterback's our best quarterback. I'm like, okay. I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, obviously, like, we've invested in Trey. Like, Trey's doing a good job. Like, we're going to do everything that we can. We're not going to change that. And we're not going to change the depth chart. But, like, I think Brock will end up being our quarterback at some point. And, like, he didn't force it, right? You had 2 injuries, and that's how Brock ended up playing. But he's always honest, even if it's not, like, one thing that owners don't love to hear when they've invested money and or draft picks or both into people, that the last pick in the draft is the guy that we think is the best. That's generally not great news, but he's honest, and he let it play out the right way. You know, Brock, ironically, I think his first game was against the Chiefs, and he had some mop-up time, and Brock, I think he threw 1 ball into the stands, and, you know, I may or may not have had some sarcastic comments for Kyle post-game. But when Brock took over last year, like, I think we had a calm about us, but there was a sense that, like, nothing catches you by surprise. And again, like, you might not love everything that Kyle tells you, but he's always open and honest, especially in the moment. And he's very clear about that with me. It's like, look, I will tell you exactly what I think of a player, a situation, a coach in the moment, but that might not be how I feel 3 weeks from now. So don't hold me to, this is what I said about somebody in training camp when we're in week 6 of the season. Like, ask me in the moment what you want to ask about whoever, and I'll give you my open and honest opinion. And again, you might not always love what he says, but I've been around enough people in this league to know that you don't always get a straight comment from people in those positions, and Kyle will always shoot you straight.
What's been your perspective?
What do you remember from the conversations when he brought up the Christian McCaffrey trade and what it would take to bring Christian here? What do you remember? He debuted against the Chiefs, and now looking back on that, when you see how the team is and how he is now, what do you recall?
Yeah, he thought it was a lot to give up for a running back, and I think John and I thought it was just the right amount to give up for Christian. And you know, I remember that very vividly, where it's like, look, it's not a pass rusher, it's not a quarterback, but you know, it's a good player, but like, do we want to give up that much? And like, collectively, it was, do you want him to go to LA? Like, do you want, like, you know, this is where we are, right? And I mean, as somebody that plays poker a little bit, like, you don't go all in on, like, you know, 6-jack offsuit, right? When you have pair of jacks or ace king, like, you might not win the hand, but like, that's the time that you want to push your chips into the middle. And I feel like that's where we were with Christian, and we did give up a lot, but I think we have one of the best, if not the best player in the National Football League on our team. And you know, for Kyle, because he cares so much about the overall organization, and you look at us when we draft, when we do things in free agency, it's generally on the defensive side of the ball. Like, we generally do not draft offensive players super high. We're not doing a ton of stuff in free agency for offensive players. It is more that he's focused on the defense because he knows he's going to spend more time on the offense. And I think it was just making sure that he felt comfortable knowing that, like, it might not work, but it's a bet that we're all willing to make.
Give that one non-football
question. Yeah, one non-football question, please. Do you have any regrets about pouring as much money as you did into the 2022 elections, given that the team kind of got dragged into the perjury investigation involving Anthony Becker?
Does anybody have a football question?
You brought up Purdy. What has been your perspective, given that you knew what Kyle thought of him even back then? What has been your perspective of the way he's grown and played here?
So my first interaction, not with Brock directly, but we always do a great job of trying to bring people's family in before. So we have our opening event, usually in preseason, to have players' families come in. And I make sure every year to talk to them and sort of give them a sense of who the 49ers are and sort of what the organization is. So I walk in, and it was upstairs in this building, Levi's, and two people were sitting there like writing down notes and like so intent on what's going on. And I'm like, whose parents are those? Like, oh, that's Brock Purdy's parents. And like in my mind, I'm like, all right, like we invested 3 first-round picks in another quarterback. We have a quarterback that had taken us to a Super Bowl. We're paying him $20 million a year. Like, this is interesting that like these people are this intent on writing down every piece of information and taking this as seriously as possible. I'm like, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And like a week later is when Kyle and I had the conversation. I'm like, okay, let's see how this plays out. And I think that's the fun thing about Brock is, he's a little over a year into his NFL career, right? He's a wonderful young man. He works his tail off. It means the world to him, and it means the world to his family, right? Like they are so tight together. I don't know if you know the story about John and his dad in college.
Yeah, played each other in baseball.
Played against each other, and John's team was one of the best teams in college baseball. I think they lost 2 games all year, and one of them, Lynch, lost to Brock's dad. Brock's dad pitched against him. He was at the University of Miami. And John didn't remember that it was Brock's dad. One of his teammates brought it up. And, once he found out, he said something to Mr. Purdy. He's like, we have some history together. And Mr. Purdy's like, yeah, I know. I beat you 3-2. And that's how Brock is, right? Like there's a confidence about him that he doesn't run around and, it's not a arrogance and a cockiness, but there's an air of confidence with him, and you can see that with his parents. Like you can see that the moment's not too big for them, and that they've raised an amazing young man.
Well,
take two more.
Is there any crossover when this game happens or around it with Leeds? Any fan engagement, anything? Because I know they play a game the day before against Rotherham. Is there any special cross promotion, anything with Leeds?
I know we've got some Leeds contingent coming out here. Some of the management from Leeds. I don't know. That's actually a good question. I don't know an answer. If there is, I will get you one. But I will actually start working on it and see if we could potentially do a watch party or something there. That would be really fun.
Will that be in Vegas?
You've talked about the roster. You've talked about how special they are. You've been around this team a long time. How special is this roster and this group and this moment for you?
Look, they're all special, right? Like, it is very, very hard to get here. And, hats off to the Chiefs for everything that they've done getting here again, right? Like, this is not easy to get here. And if you don't appreciate the moment, like, shame on you. But you have to focus on what needs to be done. And we're going to do everything that we can to play our best football game. And again, like, you have to enjoy it along the way. And I think that's really what I got from Mike's first question of halftime. Even if we lost to Detroit, like, we still had a heck of a season, right? And you have to be proud of the guys for that. Like, you can't take any of these moments lightly. You have to make sure that you enjoy it. And we're going to do our best to enjoy it, and hopefully we enjoy it after the game as much as we did before.
Jed,
you mentioned how some of the players have matured since the last Super Bowl. How has Kyle matured and grown as a coach since the last Super Bowl?
Matured? No. I mean, I think we've all come closer together, and I think we all know, again, like, not that Kyle didn't know how difficult this league was, but when you're in a place where you could have won a Super Bowl a few years ago, right? We could have won, certainly in LA we could have won, and I feel like if Brock didn't get hurt, you saw what happened. We went to Philadelphia earlier this year. We felt like we matched up well against Philadelphia. So when you feel like you can win games and you don't, it sucks. It just sucks. Like, I don't know what else to say. And I think we've collectively tried to figure out how to make the most of where we are. And that's why, you know, you sign a guy like, you trade for a guy like Chase Young in the middle of the season, right? I watch some teams that aren't really in the mix make those types of trades. I'm like, I don't know why you would trade a 3rd-round pick for an expiring contract 9 games into a season. It doesn't make sense to me unless you're trying to win a Super Bowl. And like, we are in a position to go try to win a Super Bowl. And I think that's where we are, where we're going to put our chips on the table and bet on this team.
All right, guys.
We're excited.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.